AmandaLand.
It's the AmandaLand Ambassadors of the Week. Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Y'all, please bring to the stage our Ambassador of the Week, Miss Malaika Jabali. Your mic is muted. Oh, there it is. Miss Malaika Jabali, author of It's Not You, It's Capitalism. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
You know, we're trying to make it.
How I sent Malaika a DM and all it said was, oh! And she replied back, grrr.
What else? You know, I guess there is stuff to talk about, but you know what? That's the grand opening, grand closing right there.
Man, I mean, we literally took a break yesterday because I was like, I'm not ready to just come in here and start talking about like the news. You know what I mean? Because I know a lot of people are really shaken up, myself included, by simply just okay, we've been anticipating and now it's happening of it all.
Yeah.
So we took a break yesterday to like center. I wrote a poem. I read the poem.
I love it.
We did some deep breathing and meditation.
My delayed steps since I wasn't with it.
But now we're here. And you know, Malaika and I had planned this like a month ago. Like, we gonna do an episode after this whole thing happened, just about where we are. So what was well, first of all, did you even watch the inauguration?
I had to. So I'm a political journalist. So
I know you are.
You know, things that will be personally displeasing to me, I sit
engaging.
Engaging, so I can give people the synthesis so they don't have to necessarily sit through it. So yeah, I sat through it. I wrote a little reaction piece. I mean, the whole
was that in the Guardian, the Atlantic? Yeah. I read it.
The Guardian.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I wrote a little recap, and it was really less about, I think, the inauguration and more so what it depicted with having those oligarchs right behind Donald Trump, just front and center. So yeah, I had to put my little word in.
Well, speak to that a bit. What was that? What do you feel like is notable about that?
So oligarchy is this idea that you have a few extremely wealthy individuals who are controlling a government where they have extreme power and it's concentrated in the hands of a few people. Not surprising that I would take this take because I wrote a book about capitalism and I have a whole chapter about how capitalism has really upended. I mean, we have failed to truly have democracy in this country, but any semblance of democracy we are further from because we have billionaires who control so much of the government, whether it is lobbying, whether it is this some relatively new thing of having an inauguration fund. So you've got all these tech billionaires, the Google CEO, the Facebook founder, Amazon founder, Elon Musk with Tesla and Twitter, X. So they have funneled these billions of dollars into Donald Trump. And we know it's not just for shits and giggles. They're just not there to kiki, get a little VIP room in the inauguration to Carrie Underwood. Because if it was Beyonce, maybe that would be the end of the story. But they want to influence power. They want to influence politics. And that has some really dangerous implications that I don't think we're thinking about enough in terms of consolidating really a worldview around rich white men. You know, where they control, you know, we're going to be seeing this on YouTube, which Google owns. We're going to be seeing this on this interview on Instagram. Our channels are so controlled by people who can warp our ideas and our views. And so Trump is not just working with them, in my belief, just to, fund, again, his inauguration, but to make sure that fascist worldview keeps on churning with younger generations who tune into social media. And that's alarming.
Well, even just the changes that we've seen in, like I saw that apparently Meta is now featured in the TikTok bylaws. And we also saw that there were like hashtags that were removed from Instagram, like Democrat, hashtag Kamala Harris, hashtag Project 2025. They've restored them. They claim it was a glitch, but that's the same as, oh, my sex tape leaked. It was a hack. Lies.
Yeah, people found out, so now they got to say something about it. So yeah.
So what are some of the immediate executive orders that were most striking to you?
I mean, we're gonna start with the color folks. So immigration and DEI, and we know he put that, he was ready. And we have to remember the way that Republicans operate is we see things and they're shocking because it seems like it happens all at once, but they've been working on this behind the scenes for years now. I remember writing an opinion piece about Tom Cotton, who was talking about the cancel culture and how work like the 1619 Project was the real, enemies of America, and it was redefining America. And so they were trying to cancel that. They were trying to cancel different Black education, different, education, things that are reflective of what America looks like. They were trying to do this. This was what, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So the attack on wokeness, quote unquote wokeness. They started the attack on DEI. They started the attack on critical race theory. So they've been doing this, and now they finally got their man back in office to implement it. And so this DEI, and I've got, honestly, I won't even say mixed opinions about DEI. DEI comes from this tradition of wanting to have affirmative action that has largely benefited Black professionals. So it was always limited to me. You have a handful of people who are able to really succeed under DEI, Black folks who own businesses because they get federal contracts, or if you're looking at a state or local level, they're able to get city contracts to build things. A lot of those are, Black business owners. Most of us are not business owners. You know what I mean? Right. It's to diversify predominantly white institutions. So those tend to be, a lot of those are T20 schools or Ivy League schools. So this has benefited a certain class of Black people. So we already understand that it's limited, but y'all could even give us that. Like the Black folks who did everything right. They went to school, they got their little degree. Since you got your little degree, everything. They done got their degree.
Since you got your little degree, you know everything, but can you kick my ass? Like that's the question.
Right. And so even they can't
down the offices. I mean, I don't know if you all know this, but they shut down the DEI offices for civil service workers and sent them home with paid leave until I guess it's a wrap.
Right. Yeah. Trump said that was being shut down. He's shutting down the southern border until he figures out what to do with it, which who knows what that's going to really look like on the ground. But they're not letting folks in. And we've got, a lot of times we think about the southern border, we're thinking about Mexicans or maybe, and then they think everybody from Central America is Mexican. You from Guatemala, it's Mexicans coming in. But there are so many Black folks from the diaspora who come through the southern border. So a lot of those folks through the migrant crisis, Haiti. A lot of them are Haitian. A lot of them are, from West Africa. A lot of them are from the Caribbean, and they come through those borders. These are our people. And so these are just ways that just continue to divide, not just white people from people of color, but people of color from each other. Because we're like, oh, we don't want them coming in and, messing with our programs.
Well, there is a reality that, these seeds of discord are sown, right? So when they're giving certain groups support and resources that they're not giving to American groups, like they create this, they sow discord on purpose. We also know that they create false narratives. Like when people are talking about immigrants, they're always saying illegal, illegal, illegal. And in people's minds, their version of an illegal immigrant is like somebody crossing the Rio Grande with their baby on their head in the dark by the sight of a flashlight. A lot of these illegal immigrants are people who literally was on vacation and was like, I'm gonna stay. My homegirl is from Toronto. She was an illegal immigrant for 6 years, okay? And she was like, I was dodging. I was illegal. And I was like,
right.
Wait, what? She was like, girl, I was out here scared for my life.
So she did the reverse Underground Railroad. She came from the north.
Reverse Underground Railroad.
Hiding.
But then she said that when she actually got caught, because she did get caught,
wow,
and she had to file her paperwork, You basically have to go back to where you're from for a certain amount of time. But then she said the actual things that she was doing while she was illegal here were the things that they wanted for her to become legal here. She had to show that she had jobs. She had to show that she paid taxes. She had to show that she had intent to live here. So this idea also of people like, I don't know if you saw that video. I was so irritated. They had the cameras in that lady's face when she was crying at Ciudad Juarez when she had an appointment at 1 p.m. that was canceled because Trump closed the border. And she had an appointment. And so I'm seeing people in the comments, well, that's why you shouldn't have voted for him. This woman is in Mexico. She did not vote for him. Then you had the other comments, which is, well, that's why we don't want any illegal immigrants. She's literally having an appointment to enter the country legally. He shut down those folks.
Right.
As well.
The same with DEI. These things are justifications. These are scapegoats really to maintain the white power structure. So these are buzzwords. These are campaign slogans. These are ideas and really worldviews where it's hinging on that division, hinging on that discord. Because when you sit down and think about it, a lot of this has not affected a lot of these voters personally. When you think about DEI, unless you filed a Supreme Court case and you're like, I can point to the Black person who stole my spot. Like, what is your case? The Axios, they did a poll recently. I think it was this week, where 16% of the country said that they were harmed in some way by a DEI program. And DEI that also includes women trying to, be included. That means the disabled community. These are all these groups that are considered to be, to qualify for these DEI programs. But it's always, this Black person stole my job.
I mean, I think it's also scary, just the Muslim ban. They've now expanded to where essentially, if you are from a country that, well, we know this before, right? Because he did this before, where if you were from a country that he had deemed to be a no-go country, that you could be deported. Now, if you are legally here with a green card, they can be like, no, you got to go. If you're from Iran, per se.
Yeah.
So I feel like I see people saying, well, he can't change the Constitution with an executive order. This is, of course, going to be challenged by different organizations, et cetera. What do you feel like is going to be hindering or helping those challenges to get through?
I think, there are laws, there are federal courts, there are multiple districts of federal court. So we'll see what happens in some of these more specific cases where this happens. There might be folks who are hindered by the DEI ban. And mind you, as executive orders, these can also be considered unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Knowing what the Supreme Court looks like, there's not a whole lot of faith in that, but it's not as if these are just outright orders that are, immediately the law of the land. So they might take some time to go through the complete legal process. I think in between that, you also have local organizations who are fighting on the ground, and whether there are amicus briefs that they're filing and saying, hey, this is what this actually looks like. So I don't understand what the policy decision is behind this that makes this legally just valid at all.
Yeah.
So it's still going to have to go through the legal proceeding if people do, are harmed by it and they want to make a case in, federal court. So those are possibilities. And, this idea again, where we're just, a lot of our own people are bickering about this stuff, but there's this scarcity mindset. And so if we zoom out beyond, what Trump is doing and what this week looks like, we live in a country that for decades has told working class white people or middle class white people that there's only so much to go around. Mm-hmm. And we know, just even looking at our annual spending in this country, our federal congressional budget, how much goes to defense spending, how much goes to destabilizing a lot of the countries where these migrants are coming from.
That part.
How much spending goes into, making sure that we have federal dollars for carceral programs, which affects our people right here in our communities, in our day-to-day lives. There is so much money to go around, and Congress writes a blank check. So we need to be, as much energy as we are spending on, Lucia or whoever from Guatemala, we need to be looking at our federal government and how much they are wasting our money on unjust causes that can be going to our communities, that can be going to make sure that we have jobs programs, federal jobs guarantees, to make sure that we have community intervention programs instead of funding more cops. This country is wealthy.
Maybe we got all this money to send to Israel.
Girl.
And they have universal health care. They have free schooling. They have the things that people are complaining about here, where we are fighting over scraps. They have that, as well as billions of dollars in defense and weapons. It's beyond my scope of comprehension that people here are still doing this thing where we're like, no, Massa gave me that chicken bone, and I'm going to have all the meat off that chicken bone, and I'll be daggone. Massa is eating a whole chicken.
Girl, he got the farm. He's getting grass-fed chickens. They growing. And we over here worried about the marrow.
That part. Anything else in these executive orders that really struck you?
Those are the main ones that struck out to me. That was, that's it.
Okay. Because for me, I was like, all right, you're going to pardon these January 6ers. They're now going to be like his personal militia. I feel like that's absolutely, I just feel like that's coming down the pike. I also feel like, for the LGBTQIA plus community, particularly trans folks, like there's a real now even more deliberate push that is going to marginalize them. And it's not just going to be legislative, it's going to be socially. Like what we're seeing is it's not just like, oh, these are the laws. We're about to see people act up.
Yeah. Yes. And I think, and that's what concerns me. So here's the thing. I have similar critiques of both parties when it comes to proffering this colonial capitalism. They both believe in the carceral state. They both believe in the defense budget. They both believe in the military and all of these things. There is a difference, however, in people's day-to-day lives when they confront people who are comfortable saying to them, making them feel unsafe, that we don't want your kind even alive. I did a piece a few years ago when a lot of conservatives moved off Twitter and went onto Parler. This was just before the January 6th insurrection. So I went,
tell people what Parler is real quick.
Parler was this social media site that was started to be able to counter the free speech bans on mainstream social media. So they could basically white folks could just say whatever the hell they wanted to say. And so a lot of coordination around January 6th happened on some of those conservative alt-right social media sites. Parler was one of them. I think Telegram was another one. Mm-hmm. So I got on Parler a few months, maybe a month or two before the 2020 election, before the insurrection, just after Trump lost. And you would not believe, or you probably would believe, how many people were talking about, we need to storm the Capitol. We need to lynch these people. So they would have like pictures of the nooses. Like
nooses.
Hold a whole little noose. And so they were showing themselves armoring up and gearing up for this civil war in their head against all these colored people and all the people that they have designated as enemies. And what Trump does is he gives them a voice. He gives them a platform. He went on Parler and was like, oh, these are my people. You know what I mean? And so the day-to-day safety and security that I think we might feel with a different administration just doesn't come with Donald Trump. There's a feeling of dis-ease, and for good reason.
I feel like when I went to the Obama inauguration, everybody had on their Obama outfits, right? Like we all had on our shirts and whatnot. But maybe I'm just hating. But when I was in DC this weekend for 2.2 seconds and seeing them in they Trump little fits, I was like, ew, because
I can't even eat it.
These ain't even classy. It's got like rhinestones everywhere. I'm just like, get me out of here. Wow. Let me tell you, I was in DC for 12 hours.
That was enough.
12 hours.
You know, the Republican convention was here, and that's where I started. I'm in Milwaukee, by the way, for those who would not know. You have no reason to know.
You're in Milwaukee?
I moved to Milwaukee to work on a book about the Black working class and their impact on our democracy. Wisconsin is a big swing state. So I've been researching Wisconsin for almost a decade now. So I relocated here to work on this second book.
How's that?
A lot.
I'm gonna just tell you this. So after my special came out in 2019, I did a tour and I was in Milwaukee and I did my show. And after the show, during the meet and greet, a woman came up to me to take a picture and she was like, sis, let me just tell you right now, people don't read in Milwaukee. So if you felt like you wasn't getting the laughs that you thought you was gonna get, it's because they didn't get it.
They didn't do the reading.
She was just like, they don't get it because they don't read. And she was like, let's take a picture. And I was like, dang, she talk about her own city like that.
You know, Milwaukee really do be clowning in their own city because I'm from Atlanta originally, and every time I tell people I'm from Atlanta, it's like, you from Atlanta? Why are you here? Like, it's always confusion. They never just think people just want to be here. So it's got to be for work or something. Like, yeah, it is. It's for work.
It is. I mean, Milwaukee was voted like the worst Black city in America like several times.
And that's what's so wild. I know we want to finish up the Trump stuff, but I could talk about Milwaukee all day, which is why I'm writing a book about it. But there is a substantial Black community here. And there is so much about Milwaukee that I genuinely love. Like, I love the nature aspect. I love being able to go out to these trails. We might have talked about this before. And so there's a pleasantness. You know, I don't see rats. I was in Brooklyn before moving here. I see bunny rabbits. Like, I have not seen a rat in like 4 years. You know what I mean?
I see bunny rabbit.
It's true. They be right outside my window. Like, I love it. But there's such a contrast, I think, for the average Black person who lives here, because it has been considered the worst place in America for Black people, because so many of the descendants of the Great Migration and migrants through the Great Migration relied on industrial work. They relied on these factories more so than I think any other city in the Midwest, like any other city in this quote unquote Rust Belt. Black people,
even more than Detroit.
I believe so. I gotta go back to my references, but it was one of the most robust industrial economies for Black people, and disproportionately they were in manufacturing. So when those jobs left, a lot of Black people didn't have the nest egg. Black people had been in Detroit and Chicago longer than they had been in Wisconsin. So, but when the factories moved, they didn't have, you know, multiple generations that they could fall back on for the most part. You know, you've got some exceptions, but it's always in lists like that. So that's what led me to come here, because it's like people just want to focus on the after effects of it, the symptoms, but not really the fact that we have these industrial jobs. You have these companies who can control the destiny of generations of Black folks. And the focus is always on, okay, what are these white disaffected voters doing and responding? On top of that, Wisconsin had the lowest Black voter turnout in its history in 2016. So it's a mix of all those things.
Well, that brings me to the Democrats, because I know that a lot of people are looking at where we are with Trump, and the commentary that I see is, well, y'all.
I love your impersonations.
You know, well, all y'all voting for anything other than the Democrats. That's what y'all wanted. So I would love to hear you just talk about how you feel the Democrats, I guess, or where you feel like the Democrats. You know what? I don't even care. I'm not even gonna ask that question. I'm not. I just realized in real time. I don't care.
It's been a long time. Yeah, people are upset with them, and for good reason. You know.
Well, you know, when you talk about there's corporations that only care about white people. Like, that's what just made me think about the Democrats, because in this election, they really put their energy towards trying to get centrist white people, or white people that didn't like Trump. Like, they tried to like focus on that instead of saying like, let's look at the broad spectrum of everyone else versus just professional Black women who like me.
Oh, I mean, there's really very little I need to add to that. So that is, there's almost nothing. Like, that's it. That's the 30-second pitch of my book. That is what this book is about. You know, they have focused, I mean, from the 70s, they decided as a party that they were going to be follow the third way, which was, we're not going to be, you know, outright racist like Republicans. We're not going to be super liberal like, or according to them, JFK and Lyndon Johnson, and invest in all these resources in urban communities. We're going to have a third way. And this third way is going to triangulate. That's, you know, it's number 3.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to triangulate between these conservative appeals and economic policy, but also try and make sure we put Bill Clinton on Arsenio Hall so he could do a little jazz number and get
Scooter levels.
You know what I mean? And so it has worked in some ways. It has worked and not worked in others. And so I think with Kamala, and she's the extension of those third way politics, where on one hand, they're doing, they pass policies and they promote things that seem beneficial to Black people, and they can be. But then on the other hand, they're saying, oh, but we also want to sick all these, put billions of dollars in police funding, more than Donald Trump, put them on college campuses, where we are going to detain, you know, thousands of students and young people and progressives and people of color and all this stuff. So that has been their strategy. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And in 2016, it didn't work. In 2024, it didn't work. So them focusing on conservatives in this way, Philadelphia, for instance, had the lowest turnout of those precincts in Pennsylvania. Uh-huh. That's a lot of what cost Pennsylvania. It wasn't because they didn't get enough white folks. That's not their base. Their base is a lot of them folks in Philly. Philly's Black turnout was low. Detroit's Black turnout was low. So these are key swing states because they're so busy worried about.
You know, it's my fault. It's my fault.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody been telling me, Amanda, you cost us the election. It's
right. Just fault. You personally, probably a few other, you know, whoever.
I had a truck that I was driving around that said, don't vote for Kamala.
Yeah. You had a bullhorn. You went from Detroit to Philly, you know, you was on tour. I guess they missed it.
I didn't make it to Milwaukee. I would have slid through. No, literally every day, at least once a day, I get somebody who says, it's your fault. You and people like you are the reason we're in this situation.
And not the Democrats. This has been their thing for 60 years. They have disinvested. It was their strategy to spend less in urban, AKA Black communities. They disinvested in public housing. They disinvested in public schools. They divested from all of these social programs where Black people were getting a semblance of progress after the civil rights movement. And then they say, well, y'all got to keep voting for us. And then if you don't, we're going to blame you for it instead of our own policies. It's so backwards.
We're going to ask some questions. In that moment of you speaking brilliantly, as you always do, I really feel like a lot of us are hoodwinked because the Black faces that we see on television that are not Republican, like we think, okay, well, they're not Republican, so they are leading us with the right information, but they are also speaking from this Democratic point of view that is also limited and that is once again not centering the reality of where Black people exist beyond this idea of corporate. Someone actually asked, can you define what you mean when you talk about like corporate Black people where we're able to really access DEI and affirmative action?
Literally, I mean, you could just look at Fortune 500 companies. So you've got these companies who are traded on the stock market and they go to HBCUs. They might go to, Black or just other identity affinity groups. And they recruit to work at their corporations. These are, tax identified corporations, S corporations. Right. And the issue that I have, again, I think DEI had some merit. I think a good amount. A lot of us probably benefited from it. Like DEI is just another way of saying affirmative action. You know,
Yeah.
so there are countless Black people who are in public spaces. I went to a predominantly white institution. I went to, Emory. I went to Ivy League schools for grad school. So I probably benefited from that in some way. But the problem is when you
go for grad school.
I went to Columbia Law School and then the School of Social Work at Columbia.
My sister, my Columbia sister.
I know you. Did you go to the J School? You got your master's from there.
I went to Iris.
Okay.
I got my master's in African American Studies.
Okay, African American Studies over here. That was me for undergrad. So I went to PWI.
That's how I know Robin.
You said what?
That's how I know Robin Kelly, because he was my graduate. He was my advisor.
Stop! Oh, that's amazing.
He put a blurb on your book.
You said what?
He put a blurb on your book.
Oh, listen. Well, he's also a family friend. I could go into a whole history of that, but we
okay,
have.
Sorry, my ADD was like, "Hey, okay, focus."
So just going back to this idea where we do these things and we know that this is what we're told will help us progress in a country that depends on labels. They depend on quote unquote merit. So we did all the things to have the merit, but that's not where it's supposed to end. And so I think the problem with DEI is that a lot of times Black folks get in those spaces and they say, "Oh, we made it." And so they're worried just more so about just maintaining the bag, keeping the bag. You might bring some other people into the companies, but that's not
the bag.
You said what?
Yeah. No, it's maintaining the bag, keeping the bag. You might let some other people eat from the bag, but
it's limited. The Black wealth has not grown in the last 40 years. It's gotten worse. The Black white wealth gap has just gotten larger. Our share of wealth in this country has not improved. The rate of Black people who are incarcerated in this country has not improved. So yes, it benefited us. And I consider myself a class traitor. I have done relatively well with this, but I also recognize that it has not benefited the mass of Black people in this country when you look at the overall stats. So that's what we mean by literal corporations.
All right, next question. I do believe if an immigrant, no. I forgot why I started that. Ms. Jabali, do you agree that people should be more involved in their local government offices, i.e. community boards, etc.?
Yes. Oh my God, 100% yes. So before I was a journalist, I practiced as a attorney for municipal government. I worked for the New York City Council as a public policy attorney. So I wrote laws for the city. And so we would have hearings, which I had to plan based on a different policy just about every month. And we could see just how much local government impacted people's day-to-day lives. So both state and local. When you look at local politics, specifically in New York, the city council is what controls. It's going to be a little quick civic lesson. I'm going to try not to get too deep into it.
Okay.
But the city council controls land use decisions. And land use means if somebody wants to come in and build something, they have to go before a government body to get it approved. You can't just willy-nilly just build something large on somebody's property or your own property and then not go through some kind of, checks and balances and policy.
Right.
So what land use means is if you want to, for instance, you're a multi-million-dollar developer and you want to continue to make New York unaffordable by building luxury housing, you got to go to the land use committee and say, hey, can I actually build this thing? And then if you are an active citizen participant in your government, you will go to a city council hearing and say, this is luxury housing in a community where people are making $30,000 a year. In what world would this be beneficial, a good use of our land? And city council members then have the power to say, no matter how rich the developer is, they have the power to say, we're not going to have this development in our community. That's just one example. There are plenty of them, but absolutely get involved in local politics, whether you are going to public hearings, whether you are a part of an organization that is fighting for budget resources and where those resources are allocated. Because a city like New York, a $60 billion budget, where is that going to go unless we are a part of that conversation?
Mm. Well, we're going to change the conversation up a little bit because people want to know how you stay sane. Ms. Jabali, how are you taking care of yourself while also staying engaged? Are you giving yourself breaks? And what do your breaks look like?
Yes. So as I mentioned, I become an outside girly. I don't know if
Oh,
outdoors is really because I'm not going to be camping like all the time,
okay.
but I'll be on
Okay.
a trail.
So you
I'll
have the boots, you have
yes,
the high pile fleece, and you're out there.
all about. Where's my? Yeah, I normally have her like right next to me. I be getting on walks, y'all. I started I'm doing mat Pilates later. And I want to say too, I think, yes, this is important how you take care of yourself and stay healthy. I drink a green juice just about every single day. I think
Stop yelling at me. Stop yelling at me. I feel attacked.
we have to take care of our bodies, and our bodies are so good at taking care of our minds. Like when you are physical, when you get out into nature, when you have sights and sounds of the earth, the natural world, that does
Hmm.
something to your psyche. So I think that is so critical. But what is also so important is not just self-care. And so I want us to also start having this conversation about community care. I think we're going to write a piece on it, where it's not just us in a vacuum working on ourselves, and that's important, but it's not enough. So how are we finding community? How are we working with other people? How are we fighting back in this system with people who we can love and we trust and we're in safe spaces with?
Yes.
And safe spaces doesn't mean that everybody's in agreement, it's kumbaya. It means that
Right.
people believe in your humanity, and like at a minimum you can like each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
So
safe spaces. I mean, I tell people all the time, community is inconvenient. Like, it's not just, we all get along, we all like each other. Sometimes people are annoying. Like Kayla was here earlier. This young lady was, well, I think she's a young lady. She was challenging me about something. It was annoying because I'm trying to do a show. I don't got no shade to Kayla, but she was just, and people get, but at the end of the day, we're all here.
right, and she might come back, she probably still tuning in right now. You know what I mean? We get, it's like, it's people you can be like your family. You're not going to love your family all the time, but or you might not like your family all the time, but there's genuine, the fundamental, foundational love there. So the part about taking care of yourself and staying engaged, it is finding people that you can be engaged with. What this system does to us so much is isolate us. So as much as we should be about knowing oneself and pouring into oneself, we don't want to go into selfishness where we are atomized and divided, and we're not really thinking about what's happening beyond our immediate family or our immediate needs. We're not working with organizations. There are local organizations to work with. There are places like the AFIA Center who are working for reproductive justice. There are so many social justice organizations that we should also be working with while we are also taking care of ourselves.
I love it. So y'all know that. I say that all the time, and now you've got someone else who came and said the same thing that I always say all the time. Please, real quick, just let folks know about the book. Put them on. Get them together.
I wrote It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On, to center revolutionaries of color, a lot of Black revolutionaries, folks like, obviously Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, Assata Shakur, who was a part of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. So it was to remind us of our history with anti-capitalist work, and not just being anti something, but what are we for? What have we fought for? What does the liberation struggle look like? And I used the trope, the allegory of a toxic relationship, where we are told so much as Black people, the way that we get by is to work for these corporations. The way that we get by is to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But that still has not worked for us, 100 years to 100 and change? After, we were quote unquote emancipated, a system that was built on our exploitation and slavery.
I'm like, what kind of boots are y'all talking about? Maybe we pulling the wrong straps, because I'm like, whenever they talk about bootstraps, I'm like, I don't think we all got the same boots.
I mean, we don't. A lot of us are walking around barefoot. So what's straps in the first place? So this was a way of looking at how capitalism has really damaged almost every aspect of, oh, thank you, Trish. She says she loves the book. Has undermined so many aspects of our daily lives, housing, education. It's just the fact that we rely so much on student loans, our jobs. So capitalists and capitalism, they have been working the system and the people behind it, the capitalists, the business owners, not just like, you got your tea shop. I love, my Black owned spots. We're not talking about that. We're talking about
right.
Y'all are right, okay? Because I've had people come to my book signs like, well, what am I going to do? Y'all don't, you can't support a Black-owned business. Ma'am, you're not Jeff Bezos. So this is really about Jeff Bezos, okay?
Yes. Keep your T-spot. I'll come through. Yeah.
Right. I come through like every other week. You know what I mean? I love it. So that's not what we're talking about. So it's a way of making Black radical politics and these anti-capitalist ideas approachable to the average person. And so there's some Drake memes in there. There's, every chapter is dedicated to a rom-com or a movie or a song, and it uses the metaphors from those references.
Y'all, when I tell you, I had to hit her like, this is genius. This is genius. So y'all get the book, okay? Get the book. And remember that ultimately, this is the time of learning. So even if you're like, well, I don't know nothing about that, that's why you get the book. Okay. That's why we get the book, because I don't know nothing about that. So I really appreciate you joining, and I will give you the stage to tell the people anything you feel like they need to know as we forge forward in the next few years.
Cool. Okay. I gotta breathe for that one. As I was saying, so much of our politics, whether it's from the Democratic Party, whether it's from the Republican Party, has conditioned us to think that we are alone, that we can only win by following the values of a system that has exploited our people, exploited marginalized folks for decades, that the only way we can win is to just try and play the game. But even when you do that, we are not necessarily guaranteed a life of freedom and liberty and liberation in this country. I come from a Black radical tradition where we already know what America is about. So what Trump is doing is what Nixon did, is what Lyndon B. Johnson did before he became a president. It is what George Washington did. It's what the presidents have done. It is what so many of our Congress people have done. It is what this system has done, which is to deprive us of a lot of the liberties that we thought we would have in this country. But in the Black radical tradition, there's a healthy cynicism where we already know that this country was not built for us. And so in these times when we feel like we have no outlet, where there is a lot of despair and frustration and discouragement, and believe it, I feel it. That's why I got to go on my walks. We feel this. We know that it's real, but we know that we have each other. We know that in times of a return to this white power nationalism, that we've had the Black Panther Party, that we've had the Civil Rights Movement, that we've had Black liberation theology, that we have had movement and community to return to for ourselves. So we cannot despair right now. We might be mad in the group chat, but we got to get out of the group chat and go outside and find community, find each other, take care of ourselves and each other, because we're going to win. And that's the reason why they're fighting so hard to remove our rights, to remove the little basic programs that we had, because they recognize our power. We have to recognize it too.
We might be mad in the group chat, but we got to go outside and find each other, y'all. Please go and find It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On by Ms. Malaika Jabali. Thank you so much for joining us here as our ambassador of the week in AmandaLand. We greatly appreciate you. You are welcome back anytime. I love your brilliance. I love
Seals, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Shout out to Milwaukee. Enjoyed laughing and learning with you. please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends. Also, listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere pods are casted. Listen ad-free by subscribing to Patreon Amanda Seals. Come on and join the Seals Squad. Views from AmandaLand, live 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Wednesday, with content on Thursday and Friday at YouTube Amanda Seals TV.